that really kind of led me to wanting to grow this way and also being able to provide an option that would help others not only grow their own personal legacy, but be able to provide more consistency in this long-term care world. Because, like I said, there was a lot of turnover when I started 20 years ago, and it hasn't changed.
Welcome to the Row Room Assisted Living Podcast with your hosts, Charlie Cameron and Alex Schlow. This is your go-to show for cutting-edge insights from industry leaders in residential assisted living.
Whether you're ready to launch your own assisted living business or looking to invest in this fast-growing, high-impact sector, we are here to equip you with the tools, strategies, and confidence you need to succeed. Get ready to ride the silver tsunami and change the future of senior care. Now on to today's show.
Welcome back to today's episode of the Row Room Assisted Living Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cameron, and today we're thrilled to be joined by Erin Render, CEO of Legato Living, which is a memory care franchise for assisted living. Erin, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back. We've been seeing a lot of you in the Row Room, so that's been awesome. If you wouldn't mind, give our audience a brief introduction to you and where you are at right now in your assisted living journey before we jump back in time to how it all started.
Absolutely. So currently I'm the CEO at Legato Living franchise. And what we do is we help others along the journey through opening their own residential assisted living homes. We specifically focus on memory care. I really became passionate about that when we purchased 3 homes in 2015 and have since converted them to Legato Living and now get to help others and, fulfill their dreams of business ownership.
And you're doing a great job of it.
Thank you.
Didn't mention when we started that we've partnered a couple times in various aspects, and it's been really fun working with Legato. You guys are top notch. Now, so you've come pretty far. 3 homes in 1 year is a lot. Tell us how you went from 0 homes to your first home. Like, what got you into residential assisted living?
If I'm going to be quite honest, it was wanting to have more control initially. I really was like, well, I want to do this, but I want to do things on my own terms and do things how I, feel that they should be done. So at the time, it was, I didn't have millions of dollars to buy a large facility. And ultimately, it was obviously meant to work out that way. And just having worked in the smaller space has, opened my eyes to how care, can and should be done. Yeah. But, ultimately I started in a large facility and it, led me to wanting to fulfill things, but do things on my own terms.
That's awesome. So you worked in a larger facility, and then did you work for a smaller home before you bought your own, or how did that transition work?
Yeah, I did not. I did work in a larger facility. So at 23, I was hired to run a big facility. And it was there that I really realized, I was the 6th administrator in 6 years. And they were taking bets on how long I would stay. And the staff were all older than me pretty much. And I would call my mom and ask her, how to do this or that, because, many of those skills I hadn't quite learned. But it was ultimately the best learning experience. And so, no, I didn't work or, actually, I was never in a smaller home until we purchased them.
Yeah. So give me a little sense. So you were in the big home or big facility. What was the caregiver ratio in there approximately?
Well, that was regular assisted living. And, I know that really hasn't changed. I do, focus on memory care now, so it's different. But for the regular assisted living clientele, it was 2 caregivers to 40 residents.
Wow.
We did end up getting a bath aide to help with some of those cares, but definitely lots of work.
Wow. And so when you opened your first home, what was the caregiver ratio there?
It was 1 to 4.
Wow.
So very different. And, just being able to provide those personal touches that people really truly still need, no matter their age or, health status.
Yeah. Guys and gals who are listening to this, think about that and think about what families want to see. And the crazy thing is it's not more expensive. So it's just unbelievably I think that residential care homes are going to put the big box facilities. Maybe they won't put them out of business because there's so much demand and so little supply, and that problem's only going to get worse. I just saw an article that said it's, the demand is going to outpace supply by 3.5x, and we're already a million beds short. But
Mhm.
you can see why these care homes are so desired by families and the residents. It just makes so much sense. If you've been in a big box facility versus one of these homes, it's entirely different. And it creates a pride of ownership in operating these homes, wouldn't you say?
It does. And just, the amount of satisfaction that you get when you're able to, you really get to be the good guys. So I can't tell you the amount of people that have come in and all they really want is someone who they know who they can communicate with. They know who they're going to talk to, if, if they have a question. But so many times they have no idea who they're supposed to be communicating with, or maybe that person may have left right after they moved in or something like
Mm.
that. So we really just being able to help families with, kind of whatever, and kind of handhold them through that process during a time when, they often are struggling with a lot of emotions.
A ton of emotions, right? And they just need a little bit of consistency.
Yes.
And the small homes can provide that versus those big facilities with people rotating in and out. It really makes a huge difference. So you mentioned you got into 3 homes in 2015. So did you get into all 3 at once or one at a time? How did that work?
So we actually there was a gentleman in town that was going to retire. And so I had actually went with a realtor, and, I'm really actually quite thankful that she was
Wow.
like, "Hey, I have someone who does something similar. Why don't you talk to him?" And so we went and talked to him, and they were ready to retire. We had some mutual connections from our past, and it just worked out perfectly. And at the time, yes, there was 3 locations. One of them had 6 beds, which, you know, I know there's a lot of homes and there's a lot of states that have 6. We have since shifted our model to 8 or more, just to be able to provide the, care for two, the 2 caregiver ratio, or provide 2 staff, I guess, through, so that the resident can really stay there until the end of life and be properly cared for.
Yeah, and the model is different and the income is different and it depends on what type of care you're doing, yada yada. However, if you just kind of as an average home, we tell people like 5 and 6, you're going to be lucky to break even, if you have one vacancy. So, and of course that happens in this business. So we encourage people to get higher than 8 if they can do it. Now, of course, some states don't allow it, but oddly in some states 6 does work because of state subsidies. So there's exceptions to the rule, but definitely being at more beds is more better because it allows you to do more. And what you don't want to happen is a couple of vacancies, now you're negative cash flowing and then you cut corners. Like that's going to be bad for everyone, including your business. So yeah, glad to hear that the 8 plus is where to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely makes the most sense. And, it really, I mean, I guess it depends on your, goals. If you're the type of person that wants to do more of the hands-on caregiving yourself, then that may work. But ultimately, especially with Legato franchise now, our goal is to help you work on your business versus in your business.
100% agree. And even if you are the person that wants to get into it from the start, and I've been this way with all of my businesses thus far, it always underwrite, right? Always plan as if you're going to have a manager in place so that you can take a step back, because ultimately the only way to grow your business is to take that step back. Okay, so you for this first deal, did you get all 3 homes at once? What was the total bed count? What did that look like?
Yes, good question. So we had a 9 bed, an 8 bed, and a 6. And so ultimately, after a couple years, we ended up closing the 6 bed and then expanding the 8 to 12. So the
Wow.
last several years of the owner operator of those homes before we decided to fully franchise, we had, the 2 houses.
Okay. Okay.
And I think, going back to that, a good thing to think about, and this is how we've ended up working together with you, is that I wasn't in a position to purchase the real estate. So I purchased the business side, and then the former owner rented the homes back to me. And then we ended up doing the same thing with the gentleman that purchased our homes. And so I know that, that's how we've worked together, and that's always an option and, part of what your team does too.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute, because most people think they have to go out and just buy everything. And that can be expensive, especially if you've got to renovate the property to turn it into assisted living. Now you're talking about the most expensive option, where you're buying the home, you've got a down payment, you have to have runway to build your business up, and you've got to renovate. That's a huge amount of money. Like that in a typical home, that could look like almost $500,000, right? And so where that's a crazy amount of money to come up with. Alternatively, there are other options. You can buy existing businesses. You can lease the home and just buy the business. And now you don't have to pay for renovations. You don't have to pay for the real estate cost. It's going to be more expensive on a monthly basis, but it does give people the option at a much, much, much lower cost, like 1/5 the cost to get started, right? You still should have some business runway and reserves. Like this business does require some money to get started, which you can get by partnering with others. So it's not the end of the world, or raise money like we like to do. But yeah, there's some great options out there to get started. And the cool thing is, after a year or two, usually 2 years of operating that business well, then you can open up more doors in terms of lending, and can maybe get SBA, put 10% down or less, and now purchase that home. So there really are just a lot of ways to go about this business, which is one thing we emphasize in the RAW room is there's no one set model, right? And then there's so many people out there saying you got to do exactly XYZ because I did XYZ, and that's just not true at all, right? So we designed our calculator to meet multiple models, and really there's a lot of ways to go about this, and our goal is to help you figure out which one, and then give you the resources you need to go execute that. And obviously you guys have a great model as well, and if our members are right for it, we push them to you, right? So okay, so one of the biggest challenges you kind of mentioned it is financing and funding. Now, did you still have enough cash on hand yourself to really kind of run with it? And then did you end up purchasing these homes? And if so, how did you get those loans, get that financing?
So the same bank that we went through for, the initial purchase of the business, we went back and, got a regular commercial loan for the first house after probably a year and a half, 2 years. Because like you said, once you get going, you can definitely we have an owner right now who she rented her first home. She's only been open for a year and a half, not even, and she just purchased the next one. So even though she's leasing the first one, she's purchased the next, and then, moving forward. So it's a great way to just get started. And then we purchased the first one, soon after. The one we closed, he was still owning. So he went ahead and sold that as, regular back, converted it back to a regular house, which is also the beauty of this is, these are homes and can easily just be sold as another single family home. So
it's interesting though, the value is much different as an operating business than as a home.
Very.
But you have to have the right lender that values the value of the business versus, that conventional lender is not going to look at that at all. So,
yes,
there's definitely some nuances, because I see assisted living as kind of this gray area between, hey, a single family rental and commercial real estate, where how it's valued depends on who's looking at it.
Right. And it does, it definitely, even the appraiser, the one, again, I'm in an area that this isn't as common as it is in a lot of other areas. And so, even our appraiser's like, oh, Erin, I finally got you all figured out. Like, I know, I've done enough of these now that I am, so he really is kind of the expert in that space, because it is, very different. And there's always been a lot of gray area in assisted living.
Yeah. I think we're going to clear some of it up over the next few years, because this model is going to take off. I think it already is. And I think more people are going to hear about it soon. And we're going to see things start to standardize. We're going to see more loan options. Maybe it'll be us bringing some of those options to the table is kind of one of our ideas and goals. We'll see how that pans out. We're testing a little bit of that right now. But yeah, it's interesting. The appraisal piece, for our listeners, you got to understand, the BRRRR method, or if you're going to go and renovate a home for assisted living, it's not going to truly appraise for what you put into it, because a sprinkler system, is not, if you spend 15 grand to put one in, it's not going to add 15 grand of value to the home, because it's just not what a typical homeowner is looking for. And that's why ultimately you want to build the business up, operate the business well, and then have it appraised as a business in addition to the real estate. That's where the real value comes in, and where you're able to then scale and build a portfolio, because you can value it as a business, refinance, pull equity out, and do it again. So just so our listeners have an idea of how this works, because it is kind of a weird gray area.
It is. And, it often gets, it can get really confusing, especially for those that, I think back to when I was I had never purchased a business. I mean, if I'm going to be really honest, I didn't even know what the term blue sky meant back then, or whatever. Like, where they're like, you're just buying blue sky. I'm like, well, what is that? So there's, it's okay to ask questions, I guess.
Yeah,
is what I want to say. And, you're not going to, don't feel dumb, because it's a whole new world. And so lots to learn.
Without a doubt, this is more complicated than single family rentals. It's more complicated than short-term rent. Yeah, I mean, people's lives are at stake here. This is a different business, and it comes with additional challenges, but it comes with additional reward, right? So you really get to choose what hard path you want to choose in life.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, you can do extremely well. You can cash flow 6 figures off one home, which is that there is no higher and better use for a residential single family home. Okay. So I've tried, and I've done a lot of short-term rentals, and
options.
I don't love short-term rentals anymore. I get tired of the crappy guests and all the shenanigans that come with it. Right. But you get to choose ultimately you get to choose your heart. And I think that, that's why we're here, right? We're here to provide the resources and the help to answer those questions and circumvent those challenges. So hopefully for our listeners, make sure you subscribe so that you can get more tips and learn about these things, because it's hard initially, but man, as you start to learn and learn and learn, you're going to go, okay, got it. Okay, got it. And before long, you're going to be buying 3 houses at once, like you did. So one other common challenge that I want to ask you about is staying fully occupied with great residents that match your home. So what would you say has been your biggest key to success when it comes to finding residents?
I would say that, we really we were blessed to take over initially to take over the business that we had bought in 2015. We were really fortunate to really be successful off of word of mouth. And, that really has continued. And ultimately, once you get going, word of mouth is going to be your biggest, source and best, as far as not having to pay, fees for placement agencies and things like that. However, you got to get to that point. But keep in mind that, the being able to help these families in a time that, they're trying to take care of their own family still, and they are stressed because maybe they don't know how to navigate this long-term care industry, and it's crazy, and they're getting different answers and different ideas. But ultimately you provide them a good experience. And when their neighbor is like, oh, I know so-and-so just went through this, they're going to ask them before they're going to go and, search the internet. But the other thing, ultimately that I've noticed, especially with a lot of the smaller homes, is making sure that they're setting aside that, part of their budget for website. And I think you guys help with that too, because having even just it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to do, all these amazing things, but the amount of smaller homes that I see without a website and without Google My Business, I mean, that's the only way that I search for anything.
Unbelievable.
And so those are very, inexpensive ways to make sure that people know about you. And, as I've done research in other states, I'll often be like, gosh, I don't think there's, this model doesn't exist here. And then I realize the more that I dig that it actually does. But, I think that that's the other thing that we're going to start seeing is these homes are really going to, need to start operating like businesses to be successful and growing in this market.
That's such a good point. It is amazing. And so we talk about the silver tsunami in the context of demographically speaking, hey, the boomer generation, the age group over the age of 85 will double by 2040. Like this wave is coming. But there's also the silver tsunami in the context of businesses and operators who are now retiring, right? They're turning 65, 10,000 people a day turning 65, right? So they want to get out of these businesses. Those are that creates opportunity, right? That creates opportunity for folks like us who want to own more homes. And so now you can go in and purchase these homes. And guess what? One of the most beautiful things about a business is being able to improve them.
Mm-hmm.
So not improving them for the residents, but you're also improving the value of the business. That creates equity, that allows you to scale. That just removes problems by being able to come in and improve a business. One of the simplest things you can do is help is create a website, okay, and a Google My Business. It's almost, the website's almost free. Google My Business is free, and none of them have it. And it is absolutely insane that no one is leveraging just basic search.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, my experience in real estate sales is like, hey, you can put organic content out there and people are going to find you because you're the only one doing it. It's that simple, so it is crazy. If you're listening, you're like, I need a website for my assisted living home, go to durable.co and make a website. It takes seconds. It's a great tool and boom, you have one. Okay. So you're welcome. I'm not getting anything out of that, but it's really not that crazy. There's so many good tools out there. You do not have to be an engineer like me to build a website. Okay.
I know. And they used to be so expensive. And, when you're building a very robust one, like we did for the franchise and we have multiple, pages, that's different. But for one home to get started, yes, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. You can create a website. Durable's like an AI tool that builds it for you, basically. You can create a beautiful website. You can create a Google My Business profile. That can take you about a day and $15 a month. Okay. Is that a better alternative for people to be able to find you than a placement agency that's going to charge you, 120% of the monthly rate for that resident?
Right.
I can almost guarantee yes. And you'll be able to interview these residents and make sure they're a good fit for your home. That placement agency really doesn't care, right? Not to say you shouldn't take a placement agency resident if it is a good fit and you need it, but just these simple things, and like you said, just providing great care and treating your staff well is going to then create ripples in the community that everyone's going to be pointing back to you, and they're like, hey, I need a place for mom or dad. They're going to point right back to that house. So I think just those two things together is really the secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt this episode, but if you're listening to this, then you're already an action taker. And that means you are exactly who we built the Row Room Assisted Living Mastermind for. If you're ready to unlock financial freedom by launching your own residential assisted living home, our community of like-minded entrepreneurs and industry experts will give you the exact steps to make that happen. From licensing to acquiring a home to funding your home to scaling to dozens of homes, we've got you covered. We don't just offer guidance. We provide you with the roadmap, the resources, and the launch pad for your success. And the best part? The investment in yourself today will pay you back many times over, giving you freedom, fulfillment, and financial success in the most incredibly rewarding opportunity in real estate. Ready to dive in? Check out theralroom.com and join us today. That's the RALroom.com. Hope to see you soon. Now back to the episode.
Talk a whole nother podcast about, placement agencies and staffing. But yes, those are also two very important components to this.
Hey, if you want to come back, we'll do an episode on staffing. I'm sure the people would love it. Okay, so if you were to start over, what's one thing you would do differently? Like, what advice would you give someone just getting into the business?
Well, I actually was just having this conversation yesterday. So if I thought about it some more, maybe this wouldn't be my initial one. But the one thing I am thankful for, like I said, was that I didn't do this on my own. I would have probably been, I wasn't in a financial position to, really open up and I guess face some of the unknown cost that can certainly come up. And so I'm very thankful for that piece of it. The one thing that I continue, if I had to do things different, is I think I would have been able to, which I mean, ultimately, after 5 years or 4 years, that is still, I need to remember that is still very short amount of time
Yeah. Oh yeah.
from the time we purchased to franchising. But I think the one thing is, oh, well, it's your book. So last week when we talked, you had said, has anyone read this book? And
Oh yeah.
who, not
Who
how.
not how. Yeah.
And so we went out of town last
Yep.
weekend, started listening to that. And, it really got me thinking back to the beginning of my career. And I think knowing that concept and trusting that it would work, I think when you start, you're like, I have to do it all. And even though I wasn't necessarily good at it all or wasn't passionate about it. So ultimately it was, kind of hindering my success and, I guess the path of getting there. But I think that's the one thing to remember is that it's okay to ask others for help, and it's okay that, we don't have to do this all on our own.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank you for that. I was going to text you this
Good.
week and tell you that I had
Good.
started that book, but
I'm
now,
glad to hear that. Game changer for me too, and I thought I knew it all. You always get those slaps in the face where you're like, man, I'm so good, I know it all, and then you're like, oh crap, like, oh man, I've been doing everything wrong for the last 3 years, and now it's time to. So there's always room for improvement. Who not how, for reference, great book, Dan Sullivan book. Everybody should read it. It's a good reminder that each entrepreneur only has certain things that they're good at and certain things that they're passionate about. And just focusing on those tasks as the majority of your tasks is going to make you so much more effective and grow your business so much faster
mhm,
than if you're spending time on tasks you're passionate about but not good at. You can do a little bit of that and you can learn and get good at it. That's okay. Tasks that you're not passionate about but you're good at, guess what? You're not going to be motivated to do them. So those are always going to fall to the bottom of the list and not get done. For me, that's scripted YouTube videos. I learned. I love this format way more. And then, the things that you're not good at and you're not passionate about, you need to delegate, you need to automate, you need to eliminate. Those are your options. And we've been pretty ruthless lately about hiring. Even for this podcast, we're like, hey, you know what? We don't have the time to do the editing. We don't have time to create the blog posts. We don't have time to optimize the videos on YouTube.
yeah,
All we want to do is show up and hang out with people like you. And so we just went from the get-go. We're
yeah,
not doing any of those other things. We're just going to show up and focus on interviewing guests. So yeah, it really is huge, and you can grow your business a lot more when you bring in the right who's that are good at the things you're not good at.
yeah. Well, and definitely just shows too that there's an opportunity to be able to, work together. We can all be successful in working,
Yeah.
like we work with a lot of the same people that are, kind of on the same path trying to accomplish the same goals, but what works for one person may not work for another, or, it makes a lot of sense. And I think early on in my career, and maybe this is part of just growing up, you just realize like, no, we're better together. But between that and then just me figuring out how to delegate, I that's my biggest struggle.
It's hard.
It's
Yeah.
not that I'm afraid that someone else can't do it better because I'm pretty sure that they can, but it's
Yeah.
just, taking the time to put my thoughts together and to do that. So, in fact,
Yeah.
our virtual assistant who has been with us for over a year now, she does more of like the sales and development side. And I just discovered that she is absolutely amazing at graphic design, and that has been kind of her
Awesome.
hobby. And so she's loving it. I'm loving it because
Awesome.
she gets me. And so it's been good.
I've had a full-time VA for a few years now. Her name is Jurgen, and she's amazing. And anybody listening to this is not allowed to go out there and find her because
Same mine.
I intend to employ her full-time for life. She's incredible, incredible. And we share a lot on a personal basis too. So, it's not all about, oh, just hire a bunch of VAs. Like, no, establish a relationship with people, help them grow, and they will want to see you succeed. It's a really awesome, just continuous growth cycle. Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time, he talks about, hey, even if they don't do it 100% your way, done 80% right, not by you, is still freaking awesome. Right. And so, like, anytime you can do that, and a lot of people are like, can't afford to in my business. I hear that so much.
Yeah.
And it's exactly wrong. It's exactly opposite. You can't afford not to hire so that you are working on your highest and best tasks, right? If you're
Yes.
working on things you're passionate about and you're proficient at, you're gonna like paying for that individual or labor, whatever it is definitely gonna pay for itself because you're focused on the things that will actually grow your business and you.
Right.
Okay, so you help a lot of new assisted living operators. So, what is the biggest mistake you would say new operators make, and how might they avoid that?
Well, I guess I'll start by saying why I wanted to grow this way, if you don't mind for a
Yeah,
sec. So
go
that
for it. Go for it.
I would get a lot of calls, especially like I said, this wasn't popular in our area. I would get a lot of calls and they would say, I bought this house and I really need help getting going. And so from an outsider, and we all do it, we think, oh, this is easy. Like we buy a house, we move people in, and then we realize that there's a whole city zoning department and city building codes and state licensing and all the things that we have to do. And so but I really found that I was passionate about being able to help those individuals who, obviously had a passion for it, but needed the roadmap to get there. Because I think a lot of people stop this journey because they call the city's unfamiliar with the concept, or they use a different terminology because we all call this different things. And so, but they get an answer and then they just stop. And I'm the kind of person that likes to poke and prod and
Yep.
you know
You
ask.
have to, because they don't, a lot of times they don't understand what you're asking.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, and it's no fault of their own, although I get frustrated at times, it really is a huge education piece with these
Yeah.
cities. That really kind of led me to wanting to grow this way and also being able to provide an option that would help others not only grow their own personal legacy, but be able to provide more consistency in this long-term care world. Because like I said, there was a lot of turnover when I started 20 years ago, and it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. And so, anyways, and ultimately, more consistency for these families and these residents that are going through this, season of life is what's most important to me. So, but now that I talked about that, I forget what the ultimate question was. How I
Oh, just what's the biggest mistake you see new operators make?
jumping and buying the wrong house, not having enough capital, because
Mm-hmm.
no matter how far back I look, it has always been very like it's constantly just this wave of tons of referrals, and then you feel bad because you don't have space, or you have no referrals and you're like, what am I doing? How long, and ultimately those are the times that, that's where we come into play and really helping the owners kind of get back to basics. And
Mm-hmm.
because what happens a lot with these smaller homes, and our newer owners have done it too, is, and I used to do it, we're full, and then because we don't have a lot of beds like the big places, people think we're full all the time, and so you get full, you kind of take your foot off the gas,
Mm-hmm.
and then by the time you have openings again, people aren't calling anymore because they assume you're full, or those people may have moved on and are in a different position. And so constantly just staying in front of those individuals and, keeping them in the know of what beds you have available, what might be coming up, is very, very important, because it's, especially when you're wearing multiple hats, because most of these homes, unless, once you get a few under your belt, you can hire someone to just focus on the marketing piece.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're wearing multiple hats, it's kind of like, well, I have plenty of paperwork and whatever that needs to happen today, and I'm not going to go out and market. And
Yeah.
it's, the other thing I always said was like, we don't have, one of our core values is reputation. And that's because we need to, we don't have millions of dollars of marketing budgets to go and spread the word. We need to make sure our reputation is, impeccable, so that we can use that as
Yeah.
leverage.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is reputation first to get residents, but then you have to be consistent with marketing. And because I learned this as a team leader for real estate, like it's feast or famine. You're gonna have great months, you're gonna have terrible months.
Yes.
You have to prepare budget wise, but you've also constantly have to be marketing, whether you're full or not. It doesn't hurt to still, oh, let's just send an email newsletter update. And if anybody's no longer interested, they'll just unsubscribe. Who
Mhm.
cares, right? Like, ooh, but I don't want them to. No, just send the freaking update. Like,
Yeah.
what's the worst that can happen, right? And you can also text people, hey, like, get those people in a CRM.
Mhm.
Those aren't expensive either. They're much less than a placement agency, right? The cost of one placement will cover a CRM for a couple of years, and then just follow up with folks. Hey, just wanted to reach back out. We don't have any vacancy right now, but we will certainly let you know next month if something changes.
Yeah.
People would love that, right? Because guess what? They may have had to bring in home care, and they've got mom and dad in the house, and maybe that's not an ideal situation for their family, or maybe they had to put mom and dad in a big box nursing home and they hate it. They're
Mhm.
still looking for that, but you have to remind them and be the front of that.
Yes. Yes. It's so true. And I can't sit here and say that I was always fabulous at that because I wasn't. But, staying on, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, something in today's world with all the information coming at us and with, I mean, I could be going through this with my parents right now. I mean, I have 4 kids that are still in school and that is, and a business and all of the things. And our families are no different that are having to make these
Yeah,
decisions. And
100%.
so keeping those reminders is so important.
Life is busy, and people just they just need a little help with that sometimes.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not going to hurt them. If they don't like it, they can unsub, right? It's okay. But I guarantee it's going to be better than not doing anything. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit to kind of industry trends and outlook before we wrap it up.
Okay.
So, what are the biggest trends you're seeing in the assisted living industry right now, especially when it comes to residential? Anything come to mind?
I don't know. What are you seeing?
Well, I'm seeing I'm seeing a lot of memory care focus of homes. I'm seeing a larger diagnosis rate for dementia, which is interesting. Or I guess dementia and Alzheimer's. You'll have to explain the kind of the
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also seeing more of these homes pop up. Still not seeing a lot of favorable lending options, so that's something we're exploring and trying to find options for right now. We have
Mhm.
some, but I'd like more. And then just goodness, the demand is huge and the supply is minuscule.
Yeah.
That's going to continue to be the same.
Yeah. I mean, I asked it back because I don't know if, I personally am very passionate about memory care specifically for the smaller environments.
Hmm.
I know that there's, but keep in mind when I say that, I know that there are other populations that benefit greatly. I will say that I think my personal opinion is for those residents that still, need tons and tons of socialization and interaction. Yes, we do so on a very, we're able to on a, one-on-one level all day, every day. But for those individuals that thrive on, needing all the activity and all the everything and are still able to, I often tell people the bigger facilities, that's what they do best at. Like they're designed for that, individual that really until someone starts needing a lot of physical help is and I think originally that's what assisted living was designed for. I look back at my just as things have changed and now people that were in the hospital are in skilled and now people that were in skilled are in assisted and so I think that I don't want to just be very negative because there's a lot of great facilities out there, but I truly think that once someone needs that hands-on care and that more attention and is maybe, maybe not safe in their own apartment, room in the facility, that's when the smaller environment and, is best for these individuals. So,
Really shines.
often we have residents that maybe they were at another place for years and they started falling more and they don't know how to use a call light anymore, or things like that, where those smaller environments can really cater to those individuals.
Hmm.
So I am a huge, huge proponent of memory care for the smaller setting. But I know that there's a lot of other very successful individuals that do more just plain assisted living. The other benefit is just the difference in what we're able to charge. Again, every state and their funding options look different. But if we're just talking in terms of private pay, we are seeing rates as far as doubling the monthly rate if someone does have Medicare or memory care needs.
Yeah. Yeah, it is great. I mean, of course, the needs are much more difficult to handle. And it's also interesting though that they cannot be a younger crowd, right? Because dementia onset can be early,
Yeah.
and it could be earlier than assisted living. So you could have those same residents for kind of a lot longer
Yes, and
than
we
what
I
you've
have
you've
seen
seen.
that, and I don't know, I haven't done enough research to know why this is, whether it's just we're getting better at diagnosing it.
Mm,
But the amount of people, and I think about this often because my mom's right at, around 70s. And so, but the amount of people that we have that are, not even 70 or right around is far more than we ever had before. And the thing is a lot of their spouses are still trying to work, and it's a
wow,
lot.
wow,
Yeah. So being
man,
able to support those families as much as possible and remembering that they're just as much our customer as the resident that we're serving.
100%. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so for anyone listening who's on the fence about getting into assisted living or starting a memory care home, what would you say to them?
I would say if you are already working hard, you have a passion for wanting to do good in this world, and you understand that this is not 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, that this is definitely an opportunity that you don't want to pass up. I, when I got into this, like I said, I couldn't afford $1 million facility. I really wanted to get into it just to do things on my own terms and do things how I wanted, not even realizing the real estate aspect of this at the time. And so that just opens up, the fact that a lot of businesses that that you might be looking into or might be starting, you likely are going to be renting a commercial bay, like a retail store or something like that. But to be able to do this and to have both of those options I mean, it was something I always loved real estate, but it was never I had no idea at the time. So I guess that would be my couple things I would like to point out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. And man, I could do a whole, I am going to do an episode on the benefits of just real estate. And the cool thing about this is you can layer on an incredible business too that's fulfilling, that's demographically demanding, and is financially makes sense for everyone,
Yeah.
including the families, which is crazy. And the caregivers, even like the staff. So I mean, I I know a lot of nurses who are burnt out, and I imagine that most of them would love to come to a home that's got a 1 to 4 person ratio where they can actually get to know,
Yeah.
the residents. I mean, gosh, compared to what they're currently doing.
Right.
Uh,
I mean, when we started the business, when I was looking into doing this, my
mhm,
dad was sick with cancer and he died during the time that we were purchasing, and then it was kind of delayed a little bit. But with that being said, obviously my mom's life was changing and she's a nurse.
mhm,
And so at the
mhm,
time she was just going to help part-time, and then after he passed away and her job was changing, she decided to join me full-time, which was a huge blessing. But with that, she said, and she's worked her entire career in different nursing roles, a lot of management, surgery, all the things. And she said, this is the best care that I have been able to provide. And so for people that are wanting to, that you have to have a heart for this. I always say that, like from the very beginning of getting into this industry, I was like, yes, there is a business component to this, but you are not going to enjoy any of it or be successful if you are wanting to do the operations but don't have a heart, because there's
mhm.
days that, you know, your patients will be tested and caregivers are not easy, but then it's the reward that, those days, the helping the individuals and their families, and that makes those days a little bit easier.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Those are all great points. Okay, so before we go, what's something you're working on right now that you're passionate about? Could be assisted living related, could be tangential. What are you passionate about right now?
Funny enough, I am absolutely loving when we talk about what we, really trying to hone in on what we are best at or want to really, what interests us the most. Since we're kind of at a stage in our business where we're able to start hiring more for, we hired the development out to Brendan. He's doing fabulous. He likes doing that.
Good.
I have found that I absolutely love the building codes and zoning codes. And who would have thought? Because I really don't consider myself a person that's real attention to detail. I really like big picture, but it has been very, very rewarding being able to increase my knowledge and to so that I can ask the questions,
Mhm.
especially as we move into different states. And so my head has been in these, different code books, and I would have never thought that.
Yeah. No, it seems like something
More
that's
of the
super
rules.
boring, kind of like taxes, right? You're just like, oh God, it's super boring. But if you actually grasp some of the things, like you could be so much more effective. Sean Medlin was on the podcast and he phrased this a great way. If you want to play the game, you have to know the rules. Well, the codes and the regulations are the rules, right? And so people are like, I don't want to. It's like, well, okay, well, then just don't start, right? That's step 1 and 2. All right. You need to know these things if you want to be in this business.
Right.
It will pay. It'll pay off.
Yeah.
Yes, you can hire some of that out, but ultimately, who's responsible? You, the
Yeah.
owner of the business.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
interesting.
I
That's
mean,
interesting to hear.
I know I find it interesting too. And it's it's one of those that, you know, can be some very costly mistakes if you don't know the questions to ask, or even just kind of what to look for ahead of time or what to be able to push back on. So it's been, I felt like I
Yeah.
had a really good handle on the state. Obviously I don't know all the rules, but I have a good handle on being able to read and interpret those and figure out what's going to be what they're looking for.
Mhm.
But on the building codes side, that's a whole different
Yeah.
animal.
We've had lots of experiences with that already, and we have a quick story time. Then I'll shut up. We went to install sprinklers in a house in Arizona, and we installed the sprinklers, and then the water meter came up, and then we need you to increase the size of the line that goes from the water main to the house. Well, that's 75 feet, and it goes under the road, which we would have to dig up and replace. Yeah, and so we were like, you got to be kidding me. There's not no, that's not a real thing. They're like, yep, required. And so we spent a good 8 months calling every contractor we could find, even the ones that the city recommended. Nobody would do it. And so I just kept pounding on them, like, show me where it says I have to have 1 inch. If the set 0.75 inch line is adequate in terms of pressure for the sprinkler system, why do I have to change and spend another $40,000 for a meter in the street to be torn up and repaired? And eventually they gave in and we got approved. So if it's not written in the code, you do have to kind of challenge, like, treat people well though, because all these people are part of your team technically, right?
They
We don't
are.
normally think of it that way, but we treated the fire marshal very well. We handled it as cordially as we could, but ultimately we're like, look, no contractors want to do this, and we don't see where it's written that this is actually a requirement. So long as we're meeting the fire code pressure requirements for that sprinkler system, and they were
Yeah.
like, okay. So we got a green tag, so that was good. But yeah, it's crazy how many of those things will come up along the way.
Yeah.
So hopefully I just saved people a bunch of money. Okay. Lastly, what's the best way to find out more about you and Legato Living?
Yeah. So the best way is to visit franchise.legatoliving.com.
Sweet.
Or I can always be, contacted on my email, which is Erin, Erin, at Legato Living, Legato living.com. I should say, for people wondering what the heck does that even mean, Legato Living is a musical term that means a smooth and
Yeah.
flowing transition. And we chose that because of the benefits of music for the residents that we serve, and also because of my passion of just being able to make it as smooth and easy for these residents' families as they navigate this, this season of life. So,
That's so powerful. I
'cause it's
love
one of
that.
those things where people are like, what does that mean? But we did it intentionally because I found that there was a lot of names that were very similar in this industry, and I wanted to
Generic.
be able to
Yeah.
stand out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
So
Awesome. Well, Erin, thank you once again for joining us today and sharing your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait till next time.
thank you for everything and have a great rest of your day.
Alrighty, you too. Thank you for tuning in to the Raw Room Assisted Living Podcast. We hope you found today's episode insightful. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a raving 5-star review. And a quick review helps more listeners find the show and more seniors get the exceptional care they deserve.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And just so you know, we have prepared some free resources for you to help you succeed in residential assisted living in addition to this podcast. Head over to theralroom.com, that is the RAL room.com, to download our free 10-step guide to launch your first or next residential assisted living home, or our 10 reasons to passively invest in residential assisted living ebooks.
And if you're ready to take the next step and make real moves in the RAL industry, join us in the RAL Room Mastermind. It is an exclusive community where we deep dive into everything you need to launch and grow your own residential assisted living business. You'll get access to recorded courses, live calls with industry experts, a RAL calculator, resources and tools, like-minded entrepreneurs, funding opportunities, and an expert networking community to help you along your journey.
Be sure to join us next time on the Raw Room Podcast as we continue to explore the world of residential assisted living with more great guests. See you then.